Nathan Reed stared at the New York skyline from his corner office on the 63rd floor, the afternoon sun gleaming off the glass and steel monuments to success that surrounded Reed Tower. At 42, he had everything money could buy, except peace. The phone on his desk rang, shattering his momentary reflection. His assistant's voice came through the intercom with a peculiar hesitation that made him sit up straighter. "Sir, there's a call from Mercy Hospital. They say it's urgent." "Put them through," Nathan replied, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. Hospitals rarely called with good news. "Mr. Reed?" A woman's voice, professional but gentle. "This is Dr. Elaine Porter from Mercy Hospital. I'm calling about Emily Brooks. She's listed you as the father of her newborn son." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Emily Brooks, his ex-wife. 6 months since their divorce was finalized after 5 years of marriage that had begun with passion and ended with cold silence. "That's impossible," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, though no one was there to hear. "We've been divorced for 6 months. And before that," he trailed off, remembering the last bitter year of their marriage when they had lived more like hostile roommates than husband and wife. "Mr. Reed, I understand this is unexpected. Ms. Brooks was admitted early this morning with complications. The baby was born premature at 32 weeks. She insisted we contact you." Nathan's mind raced through calculations. If the baby was premature at 32 weeks and it had been 6 months since the divorce, the timing made it possible barely, but they had been practically separated for months before that, living under the same roof but orbiting each other like distant planets. "There must be some mistake," he said firmly. "Or she's lying." The doctor's voice cooled. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Brooks is currently in recovery. The baby boy is in the NICU. She has no family listed as emergency contacts. You are the only name she provided." Nathan closed his eyes. Emily had been estranged from her family for years, one of the many things they had in common when they met. Two ambitious orphans of circumstance, they had recognized in each other a kindred determination to succeed at any cost. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, he said finally, then hung up without waiting for a response. He buzzed his assistant. "Cancel my meetings for the rest of the day. Personal emergency." 20 minutes later, Nathan strode through the sliding doors of Mercy Hospital, his tailored suit and commanding presence causing heads to turn. At the information desk, a young woman looked up, recognition flashing in her eyes. Nathan Reed wasn't just wealthy. His face regularly appeared in business magazines and local news. "I'm here about Emily Brooks," he said without preamble. The receptionist directed him to the maternity floor. In the elevator, Nathan loosened his tie, feeling suddenly constricted. The last time he had seen Emily was in their divorce lawyer's office, both of them signing papers with a detached efficiency that belied their once passionate relationship. She had looked beautiful even then, her dark hair falling in waves around a face that had grown thinner during their last year together. There had been a moment, just one, when their eyes met over the signed documents, and Nathan had thought he saw something, regret perhaps, but then it was gone, replaced by the cool mask she had perfected during their final months. Dr. Porter met him at the nurse's station, a tall woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Mr. Reed, thank you for coming. Ms. Brooks is resting but stable. The baby was delivered via emergency C-section due to preeclampsia. He's small, 4 pounds, 3 ounces, but his vitals are strong." "I want to see her first," Nathan said. The doctor nodded. "She's in room 418. She's been through a lot today, so please keep the visit brief." Nathan found the room easily. He paused at the door, suddenly uncertain. What did you say to the ex-wife who had just named you the father of her child? A child that, if the timing was right, had been conceived during their last desperate attempt to save their marriage. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open. Emily lay in the hospital bed, her skin pale against the white sheets, dark circles under her closed eyes. An IV dripped steadily beside her. She looked fragile, a word he would never have associated with the fiercely independent woman he had married. As if sensing his presence, Emily's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, confusion clouded her features, then recognition dawned, followed by something Nathan couldn't quite read. "You came," she said, her voice raspy. "You named me as the father of your child. What did you expect?" His tone was harsher than he'd intended, the shock still reverberating through him. Emily winced. I didn't have anyone else to call. Is it true? He asked, moving closer to the bed. Is he mine? She held his gaze. Yes. Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant? Emily turned her face away. Would you have believed me? We were barely speaking by the end. That night in December, Nathan said quietly, after the Thompson deal. Emily nodded. They both remembered it. A rare celebration dinner after Nathan had closed a deal that had been years in the making. They'd drunk expensive champagne, reminisced about better times, and for one night, pretended the gulf between them didn't exist. They had fallen into bed with the familiarity of long-time lovers and the desperation of people grasping at something already lost. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Emily said. I tried to call you, but your number had changed. You could have contacted me through the company, Nathan pointed out, anger beginning to simmer beneath his composed exterior. And say what? Sorry to bother you, but that night we had pity sex might have resulted in a baby. Emily's own anger flared. You made it very clear you wanted a clean break. No alimony, no shared assets, just a surgical removal of me from your life. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. You agreed to those terms, eagerly if I recall. I wanted out too, Emily admitted. We were making each other miserable. A nurse poked her head in. Ms. Brooks, it's time for your medication. And, sir, the doctor mentioned keeping the visit brief. Nathan nodded. I'll go, but we're not finished with this conversation. Emily's face softened slightly. Have you seen him? No. Will you, before you leave? Nathan hesitated. A baby, his son, was somewhere in this hospital, a tiny person whose existence he'd been unaware of until an hour ago. The thought was overwhelming. Yes, he said finally, I'll see him. The NICU was a quiet, controlled environment, a stark contrast to the chaos Nathan felt internally. A nurse led him to an incubator where a tiny form lay connected to monitors. The baby was impossibly small, with translucent skin and a dusting of dark hair that reminded Nathan of Emily. You can touch him through these ports, the nurse explained, indicating the circular openings in the incubator. Nathan hesitated, then carefully placed his hand through the opening. With one finger, he gently touched the baby's hand. To his surprise, the tiny fingers reflexively curled around his. Something shifted in Nathan's chest, a tightening that wasn't altogether unpleasant. He stared at the small face, searching for any resemblance to himself or Emily. Does he have a name? Nathan asked, not taking his eyes off the baby. Not yet, the nurse replied. Ms. Brooks wanted to wait. As Nathan stood there watching the gentle rise and fall of his son's chest, his phone buzzed in his pocket, the outside world intruding. He carefully withdrew his finger from the baby's grasp and stepped back. I have to go, he told the nurse, but I'll be back tomorrow. Outside the hospital, Nathan sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel. Emily Brooks, the woman he had once loved enough to marry, the woman he had later barely recognized as they drifted apart, was back in his life. And she had brought with her a son, his son. The question now was what to do about it. Nathan barely slept that night, his penthouse apartment feeling emptier than usual as dawn broke over Manhattan. He showered and dressed methodically, his mind replaying the events of the previous day. By 7, he was back at the hospital, a paper cup of untouched coffee cooling in his hand as he rode the elevator to the maternity floor. He checked on the baby first. In the artificial light of the NICU, his son, the word still felt foreign in his mind, seemed slightly stronger, his skin less translucent. A different nurse greeted him, updating him on the night's progress. He's a fighter, she said with an encouraging smile. His oxygen levels have improved since yesterday. Nathan nodded, unsure what to say. He stood watching the tiny chest rise and fall, counting each breath as if to reassure himself of the child's continued existence. Would you like to try holding him today? The nurse asked. Skin-to-skin contact is beneficial for premature babies. I don't know how, Nathan admitted. A rare confession of inadequacy from a man who prided himself on competence in all things. I'll show you, she offered. It's simpler than closing a business deal, I promise. The joke, gentle as it was, broke some of the tension. 20 minutes later, Nathan sat in a reclining chair, his dress shirt unbuttoned, the tiny warm body of his son resting against his bare chest. A blanket covered them both, and the nurse had positioned various tubes and wires to allow for the contact. Nathan had never felt more terrified or more protective in his life. The baby's weight was negligible, yet he felt anchored by it, unable and unwilling to move. "I'll leave you two alone for a bit," the nurse said. "Just press the call button if you need anything." As the door closed, Nathan looked down at the sleeping face. "I don't even know what to call you," he whispered. "I was thinking, Alexander." Emily's voice came from the doorway. She was in a wheelchair, looking exhausted but determined. A nurse stood behind her, clearly disapproving of the unscheduled visit. "Miss Brooks should be resting," the nurse said pointedly. "I'll be brief," Emily promised, her eyes not leaving Nathan and the baby. Nathan nodded to the nurse, who reluctantly withdrew, leaving them alone. "Alexander," Nathan repeated. "After your grandfather?" Emily looked surprised that he remembered. "Yes, he was the only family member who ever supported me." "Alexander Reed," Nathan tested the name aloud. "Brooks Reed," Emily corrected gently. "If that's okay." Nathan studied her face. She looked different from yesterday, more alert but also more guarded, as if she'd had time to rebuild some of her defenses. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, the question that had kept him awake all night. Emily sighed, adjusting her position in the wheelchair. "I tried, Nathan. I came to your office in January, but your executive assistant, the new one, wouldn't let me past reception without an appointment. And when I called, she said you were booked solid for weeks." Meredith was following protocol, Nathan said, though a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. Had Emily really tried to reach him? "By February I was angry," Emily continued. "I convinced myself you didn't deserve to know, that I could do this on my own, like I've done everything else in my life." There it was, the fierce independence that had initially drawn him to her and eventually driven a wedge between them. Emily Brooks had clawed her way up from poverty to become a respected art curator. When they met at a gallery opening 6 years ago, her determination had matched his own. "And what changed?" Nathan asked, his hand instinctively moving to support the baby's back as he stirred slightly. "Reality," Emily said with a wry smile. "Morning sickness that lasted all day. Complications that meant I had to cut back my hours at the gallery. Medical bills." She paused. "And maybe the realization that my pride wasn't more important than his right to know his father." Nathan absorbed this. "Were you ever going to tell me if you hadn't needed to call from the hospital? I had your name on the birth plan," she admitted, "but I wasn't sure if I'd go through with it when the time came." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the gentle beeping of the monitors connected to Alexander. "I'm selling the gallery," Emily said finally. "A client made an offer last month. It's a good one, enough to give Alexander and me a fresh start somewhere else." Nathan's head snapped up. "You're leaving New York?" "I was thinking Boston. My friend Sarah has a guest house we could stay in until I figure things out." "And what about me?" Nathan asked, a surprising surge of possessiveness rising in his chest. "You've just told me I have a son, and now you're planning to take him to Boston." Emily's expression hardened. "I'm not taking him away from you, Nathan. You've known about him for less than 24 hours. And let's be honest, how much of a role were you planning to play anyway? Child support checks don't require geographic proximity." The accusation stung, partly because Nathan hadn't yet thought beyond the immediate situation. What role did he want in his son's life? The child shifted against his chest, and Nathan felt that strange tightening again. "That's not fair," he said quietly. "You didn't give me a chance to decide." Emily's eyes glistened. "Life isn't fair." Something we both learned early, didn't we? It was true. They had bonded initially over similar childhoods, Emily raised by an alcoholic grandfather after her parents died, Nathan shuttled between foster homes after his mother abandoned him. Their shared determination to never be vulnerable again had drawn them together and ultimately pushed them apart. "What do you want from me, Emily?" Nathan asked directly. She met his gaze. "Nothing you're not willing to give." "Financial support would help, yes, but I'm not expecting you to suddenly become Father of the Year." The dismissal in her tone sparked Nathan's competitive nature. "Don't underestimate me." Emily almost smiled. "I never have. That was one of our problems, remember?" A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Porter entered, frowning at Emily. "Miss Brooks, you should be in bed. You had major surgery yesterday." "I'm going," Emily said, but her eyes remained on Nathan. "Think about what you want, Nathan. Really want, not what you think you should want or what your image requires. Alexander deserves that much." As the doctor wheeled Emily out, Nathan was left with the weight of her words and the lighter weight of his son on his chest. He looked down at Alexander, studying the small features for any resemblance to himself. "What do I want?" he murmured. Nathan's phone vibrated in his pocket. With his free hand, he checked the screen. 15 missed calls and 23 emails since last night. The Thompson merger wouldn't finalize itself. The Hong Kong investors wouldn't wait. The world he had built continued to spin, demanding his attention. Yet for the first time in his driven, relentless life, Nathan Reed found himself wondering if there was something more important than the next deal, the next acquisition, the next victory. When the nurse returned an hour later, she found Nathan still holding Alexander, speaking softly to him about everything and nothing. His childhood dreams, the building he'd designed himself, the gallery where he'd first met Emily. The baby slept peacefully, oblivious to the turmoil in his father's mind. "You're a natural," the nurse commented as she helped return Alexander to his incubator. Nathan straightened his clothing, the corporate mask sliding back into place. "When will he be able to leave the hospital?" "That depends on his progress. Probably at least 3 weeks, assuming no setbacks." 3 weeks. The Thompson merger would be complete by then. The Hong Kong expansion would be underway, and Emily would be preparing to take his son to Boston. Nathan took one last look at Alexander, then headed for the exit. As he passed the nurse's station, he made a split-second decision and approached the desk. "I'd like information about my ex-wife's medical bills," he said, pulling out his wallet. "Emily Brooks, room 418. I want to cover all expenses, past and future." The nurse directed him to the billing department, where Nathan handed over his platinum card without blinking at the mounting costs of premature birth and neonatal intensive care. "Is there anything else, Mr. Reed?" the billing clerk asked, clearly impressed by his easy generosity. "Yes," Nathan said, making another impulsive decision. "I want to know what it would take to have them transferred to New York Presbyterian. Their neonatal unit is the best in the city. That would require doctor approvals, insurance clearances." "Make it happen," Nathan interrupted, sliding his business card across the desk. "Money is no object. Call me directly with any issues." Back in his car, Nathan finally checked his voicemail. His assistant's increasingly concerned messages about missed meetings blended with his lawyer's questions about unexpected hospital charges. Nathan started the engine, but didn't immediately pull away from the curb. Instead, he placed a call to his head of security, a former military man who handled sensitive matters with discretion. "Jack, I need a background check on Dr. Elaine Porter at Mercy Hospital, and I need surveillance on Emily Brooks. Discreet. Nothing intrusive, just keep an eye on her." "Problem, sir?" Jack asked, his voice neutral. Nathan stared at the hospital entrance. "Not a problem. A situation. I just found out I have a son." 2 days later, Nathan sat in his home office, staring at the dossier Jack had compiled. The background check on Dr. Porter had revealed nothing suspicious. She was exactly what she appeared to be, a respected obstetrician with 20 years of experience. The report on Emily was more illuminating. Financial records showed her gallery, Brooks' contemporary, had been struggling for the past year. What had once been a thriving showcase for emerging artists had fallen victim to rising rents and changing neighborhood demographics. Emily had taken out a second mortgage 6 months ago, right around the time of their divorce. Her medical insurance was minimal, the kind of bare-bones coverage that self-employed people often settled for. The gallery sale she'd mentioned wasn't just a good opportunity, it was a financial necessity. Nathan closed the file, uncomfortable with the invasion of Emily's privacy, yet unable to regret requesting the information. He needed to understand the full picture before making any decisions. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Reed, your lawyer is here," his housekeeper announced. "Send him in, Mrs. Chen." Gregory Harmon entered the office with the confident stride of a man who billed $850 an hour. He'd handled Nathan's divorce and had been his legal counsel for nearly a decade. "I've drafted the papers as you requested," Greg said, placing a folder on Nathan's desk, "though I still think this is premature." "I appreciate your concerns," Nathan replied, opening the folder to scan the documents, "but I need to establish my rights before she leaves the state." "A paternity test would be the first logical step," Greg pointed out, taking a seat across from Nathan. "Your ex-wife's claim doesn't automatically make you the father." "I'm aware of the biology, Greg." Nathan's tone was clipped. "The timing aligns, and frankly, Emily isn't the type to lie about something like this." People change, the lawyer said carefully, especially when money is involved. Nathan looked up sharply. What are you implying? Greg held up his hands. Just doing my job, Nathan. You've built considerable wealth since your marriage ended. A child would entitle her to significant support. The suggestion that Emily was manufacturing a paternity claim for financial gain rankled Nathan more than he expected. Despite their bitter divorce, he knew her integrity was unquestionable. I'll take the test, Nathan conceded, but proceed with the paperwork. I want joint custody on the table before she has a chance to establish residency in Massachusetts. Understood. Greg gathered his briefcase. I'll file first thing tomorrow. And Nathan, he added, pausing at the door, be careful about making any unofficial financial commitments in the meantime. It could be construed as acknowledging paternity. After the lawyer left, Nathan poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, though it was barely noon. He swirled the amber liquid, contemplating his next move. The hospital transfer he'd arranged had been denied. Alexander wasn't stable enough to be moved, according to Dr. Porter. Emily had been discharged yesterday, but was spending most of her time in the NICU. Nathan's phone rang. The display showed Mercy Hospital. He answered immediately. Mr. Reed, this is Nurse Wilson from the NICU. There's been a change in your son's condition. Nathan's grip tightened on the phone. What kind of change? He's developed an infection. Dr. Porter has started him on antibiotics, but she thought you should know. I'll be right there. Nathan was already moving, grabbing his keys and jacket. The drive to the hospital was a blur of traffic and mounting anxiety. In the 3 days since learning of Alexander's existence, Nathan had visited the NICU every morning and evening. Each time, he'd held the tiny boy against his chest, marveling at the perfect miniature features, the determined grip of the small fingers. He found Emily in the NICU waiting room, her face drawn with worry. She looked up as he approached, relief briefly replacing the tension in her expression. What happened? Nathan demanded. They're not sure how the infection started, Emily said, her voice hoarse. They noticed his temperature was elevated during the morning check. Then his oxygen levels started dropping. Nathan paced the small room. Where's Porter? I want to talk to her. She's with him now. Nathan, please sit down. You're making me more nervous. Reluctantly, Nathan took the chair beside her, noticing how exhausted she looked. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore what appeared to be the same clothes from yesterday. Have you been here all night? He asked. Emily nodded. I couldn't leave him. You need to rest, Nathan said, the authoritative tone slipping in automatically. Emily gave a tired laugh. That's rich, coming from the man who once worked 72 hours straight to close the Westlake acquisition. That was different. Was it? Emily's eyes met his. You always put work first, Nathan, even on our honeymoon. Remember Bora Bora? You spent more time on conference calls than on the beach with me. The accusation hit home because it was true. Nathan had built his empire through relentless focus and sacrifice, including the sacrifice of his marriage. I've changed, he said, though even to his own ears the claim sounded hollow. Emily didn't respond, turning instead as Dr. Porter entered the waiting room. Both parents stood immediately. The antibiotics are starting to work, the doctor said without preamble. His fever's down slightly, and his oxygen levels are stabilizing. The next 24 hours will be critical, but he's responding to treatment. Can we see him? Emily asked. Dr. Porter nodded. Briefly. We're limiting contact to reduce the risk of further infection. They followed her to the NICU, where Alexander lay in his incubator, looking even smaller and more vulnerable than before. Additional monitors and tubes had been added, each beep and readout a reminder of his fragile hold on life. Emily pressed her hand against the plastic barrier, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. Nathan stood beside her, fighting an unexpected tightness in his throat. He's a fighter, Dr. Porter assured them. Preemies often face setbacks, but they're remarkably resilient. After she left, Nathan and Emily stood in silence, watching their son struggle through the transparent walls that separated them. I filed for joint custody today, Nathan said finally, the words escaping before he could reconsider. Emily stiffened beside him. What? I've asked my lawyer to draw up custody papers. I don't want you taking him to Boston. Emily turned to face him, anger replacing the exhaustion in her eyes. You did what? Our son is fighting for his life and you're worried about custody arrangements. I'm thinking about his future, Nathan defended. He should be in New York with access to the best medical care, the best schools, with a father who'll see him for 15 minutes between business meetings. Emily's voice rose, drawing a warning glance from a nearby nurse. That's not fair, Nathan hissed, lowering his voice. You don't know what kind of father I'll be. Neither do you, Emily shot back. You've known about him for 3 days, Nathan, 3 days. And your first instinct is to call your lawyer. Put that way, it did sound callous, but Nathan had built his success on swift, decisive action. I'm trying to do the right thing. The right thing for whom? Emily asked, her voice breaking. For Alexander. For me? Or for you and your ego? Before Nathan could respond, a monitor attached to Alexander began to alarm. Medical staff rushed in, pushing both parents aside as they worked on the tiny body. What's happening? Emily cried, her hands pressed against her mouth. Dr. Porter appeared beside them. His oxygen levels are dropping again. I need you both to step outside. They were ushered back to the waiting room, where Emily collapsed into a chair, her face buried in her hands. Nathan stood helplessly, the control he so carefully maintained in every aspect of his life slipping away. Minutes stretched into an agonizing hour. When Dr. Porter finally returned, her expression was grave but not defeated. We've stabilized him for now, she reported. But the infection is more aggressive than we initially thought. We're changing his antibiotics and monitoring him closely. Is he going to be okay? Nathan asked, voicing the fear that hung between them. The doctor's hesitation spoke volumes. The next 12 hours are critical. I wish I could give you better news. After she left, Nathan sank into the chair beside Emily. Without thinking, he reached for her hand. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. I'm scared, Nathan, she whispered, a confession he'd never heard from her before. Me too, he admitted, the words unfamiliar on his tongue. They sat in silence, connected by their shared fear and the small life fighting just rooms away. The anger and recriminations of moments earlier seemed trivial now. I'm not trying to take him away from you, Emily said finally. I just needed a fresh start. The gallery is failing, and New York is too expensive for a single mother. Nathan tightened his grip on her hand. You don't have to do this alone. I've been alone most of my life, Emily reminded him. It's what I know. It's what we both know, Nathan corrected gently. Maybe that's why we couldn't make it work. Two people too used to fighting their own battles. Emily looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time since their divorce. When did you get so insightful? Probably around the time I held our son, Nathan admitted. It changes your perspective. A ghost of a smile touched Emily's lips. Yes, it does. The moment of connection was interrupted by Nathan's phone. He ignored it until it buzzed a third time in quick succession. You should get that, Emily said, withdrawing her hand. It's probably important. Nathan checked the screen. Jack, his head of security. Reed, he answered tersely. Sir, there's a situation at the office, Jack reported. Meredith asked me to call. The Thompson representatives are threatening to walk if you don't show for the signing. They've been waiting 3 hours. The Thompson deal, worth billions, the culmination of 2 years' work, the cornerstone of Reed Enterprises' expansion into Asia. Nathan glanced at Emily, who was watching him with a resigned expression she'd worn too often during their marriage. Tell them I'll be there in 30 minutes, he said, ending the call. Go, Emily said before he could speak. Some things never change, right? This is different, Nathan insisted. This deal is always another deal, Emily finished for him. I know the script, Nathan. I lived it for 5 years. Nathan stood, torn between the pull of business and the fragile life in the NICU. I'll come back as soon as it's done. Don't worry about us, Emily said, turning away. We'll be fine. We always are. Nathan hesitated, then leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead. I'll be back, he promised. Things are different now. As he strode toward the exit, Nathan tried to ignore the voice in his head, pointing out that his actions were proving Emily right. Some things never changed, but he would show them both, that he could be different, that he could be the father Alexander needed. Halfway to his car, Nathan's phone rang again. This time, it was Dr. Porter. Mr. Reed, you need to come back immediately, she said, her voice urgent. Alexander's condition has worsened. We're moving him to emergency surgery. Nathan was already running back to the hospital entrance. What happened? The infection has affected his heart. We need to operate now. I'm on my way, Nathan said, his decision made in an instant. As he raced back to the NICU, he called Jack. "Tell the Thompson representatives I won't be there. Reschedule or cancel, I don't care which." "Sir?" Jack's voice registered shock. "But the merger—" "My son is having emergency surgery," Nathan cut him off. "Nothing else matters right now." He ended the call as he reached the NICU, where Emily stood surrounded by medical staff, her face white with terror. She looked up as he approached, surprise and relief mingling in her expression. "You came back," she said. Nathan took her hand, gripping it tightly. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised, and this time he meant it. The surgical waiting area became their world for the next 6 hours. Nathan and Emily sat side by side, occasionally speaking but mostly silent, united in their vigil. Several times Nathan's phone buzzed with messages from his office, but he ignored them all, his focus entirely on the closed doors beyond which surgeons fought to save his son's life. Emily dozed fitfully against his shoulder, exhaustion finally claiming her. Nathan remained awake, his mind churning with memories and regrets. He thought back to their wedding day 5 years ago, Emily radiant in a simple white dress, both of them flushed with success and ambition. They had vowed to build a life together, but somewhere along the way they had constructed separate lives instead, parallel paths that rarely intersected. When Dr. Porter finally emerged, her surgical cap still in place, both parents rose as one. "He made it through the surgery," she announced, and Nathan felt Emily sag with relief beside him. "We've repaired the damage to his heart valve. He's being moved to recovery now." "Is he going to be okay?" Emily asked, her voice small. "He's still critical, but his chances are much better now," the doctor said carefully. "The next 48 hours will tell us more about his long-term prognosis. You should prepare yourselves. His recovery will be a marathon, not a sprint." "When can we see him?" Nathan asked. "In about an hour. He'll be heavily sedated." After Dr. Porter left, Emily collapsed back into her chair, tears of relief streaming down her face. Nathan sat beside her, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm his usual self-control. "I thought we were going to lose him," Emily whispered. "Me too," Nathan admitted. He hesitated, then added, "I called my office, told them I wouldn't be in for the foreseeable future." Emily looked at him in disbelief. "What about the Thompson deal?" "It doesn't matter." Nathan Reed, walking away from a billion-dollar merger. Emily shook her head. "I never thought I'd see the day." "Neither did I," Nathan said honestly. "But watching them take Alexander into surgery, nothing has ever put things into perspective like that." A nurse approached them, breaking the moment. "Ms. Brooks, we've prepared a room for you to rest in. Dr. Porter insists you get some sleep before Alexander returns from recovery." Emily looked ready to protest, but Nathan squeezed her hand. "Go, I'll stay and wait for him. You'll come get me the minute he's back, the very second," he promised. After Emily reluctantly followed the nurse, Nathan made a series of calls, first to his executive team, authorizing his CFO to handle the Thompson negotiations in his absence, then to his lawyer to halt the custody filing. As he ended the last call, his assistant Meredith rang through. "Mr. Reed, I've rescheduled your meetings for the next 2 weeks as requested," she reported efficiently. "Is there anything else you need?" Nathan hesitated. "Meredith, did Emily Brooks try to see me in January?" A pause. "Yes, sir, she came by the office several times without an appointment." "And you didn't put her through because—" "You had instructed me to screen all personal calls and visits after the divorce, sir, especially from Ms. Brooks. You said it was a clean break and not to be disturbed with, and I quote, emotional fallout." Nathan closed his eyes, remembering the bitter state he'd been in after signing the divorce papers. "Thank you for clarifying, Meredith. In the future, please put Ms. Brooks through immediately if she calls or visits." "Of course, sir. And may I say, congratulations on your son." The word still jolted him. Son. Nathan Reed, who had spent his life avoiding attachments and vulnerabilities, was someone's father. When they finally allowed him to see Alexander, the baby was connected to even more machines than before, his tiny body seeming impossibly fragile among the tubes and wires. A nurse explained each monitor and readout, assuring Nathan that though things looked scary, Alexander was holding his own. "Would you like to read to him?" the nurse suggested, noticing Nathan's uncertainty. Even sedated, babies respond to their parents' voices. Nathan didn't have any children's books, but he had his tablet. He pulled it out and searched for a story. After a moment's consideration, he began reading The Little Prince, his voice low and steady in the quiet room. Once when I was 6 years old, I saw a magnificent picture in a book called True Stories from Nature, about the primeval forest. He was still reading an hour later when Emily appeared in the doorway, her hair damp from a shower, wearing scrubs the hospital had provided. "That was my favorite book as a child," she said softly, moving to stand beside him. Nathan marked his place and set the tablet aside. "Mine too. My third foster mother used to read it to me." Emily's eyes widened slightly at this personal revelation. Nathan had rarely spoken about his childhood during their marriage. "How is he?" she asked, turning her attention to their son. "Stable. His vitals have improved slightly in the last hour." Emily brushed her fingers gently over Alexander's hair. "I keep thinking about how small he is, fighting so hard." "He gets that from you," Nathan said. "That stubborn strength." Emily smiled faintly. "And from you. Reed men don't give up easily, do they?" "No, we don't." Nathan watched her face as she gazed at their son. Despite the exhaustion and worry etched there, she was still beautiful to him, still the woman who had once made him believe in possibilities beyond the next business conquest. Over the next 2 weeks, Alexander proved himself a fighter indeed. Day by day, his condition improved, first weaning off the ventilator, then gradually requiring fewer medications and supports. Nathan and Emily established an unspoken routine, taking shifts at the hospital, passing each other in hallways with updates and coffee cups. Nathan worked remotely when he had to, his tablet and phone keeping Reed Enterprises running, while he divided his time between the NICU and the hospital's family lounge. To his surprise, the world didn't collapse without his physical presence in the office. The Thompson deal closed successfully under his CFO's guidance, and the Hong Kong expansion proceeded on schedule. It was during the 3rd week, as they were both watching Alexander sleep, now in a regular crib rather than an incubator, that Emily broke their careful truce. "I've been thinking about Boston," she began hesitantly. Nathan tensed. "What about it?" "I don't think we should go." Emily met his eyes directly. "Alexander needs both of us, at least for now, and the specialist Dr. Porter recommended is here in New York." Relief washed over Nathan, though he kept his expression neutral. "What about the gallery? Your plans?" Emily sighed. "The sale fell through last week. The buyer backed out after hearing about Alexander's condition. Too much uncertainty," he said. "I'm sorry," Nathan said, and meant it. The gallery had been Emily's pride and joy, the culmination of her journey from scholarship art student to respected curator. "It's okay. Some things matter more." She brushed her fingers over Alexander's cheek. "I'll figure something else out." Nathan was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "I have a proposition." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Business or personal? Both, maybe." Nathan leaned forward. "The Reed Foundation has been planning an arts initiative, supporting emerging artists, providing exhibition space, offering grants. It needs someone to run it, someone with vision and experience." "You want me to work for you?" Emily's tone was incredulous. "Not for me, with me. The foundation is separate from Reed Enterprises. You'd have complete creative control." Emily studied his face. "Why would you do this?" "Because you're good at what you do," Nathan said honestly, "and because it would allow you to stay in New York, give you financial stability, and keep your career in the arts. And keep Alexander close to you," Emily added perceptively. Nathan nodded. "That too." Emily was quiet for a long moment. "I'd need my own office separate from Reed Tower, of course, and a budget I control. Within reason." A hint of a smile touched her lips. "And no micromanaging from you." "I can't promise that," Nathan admitted, "but I'll try." Emily looked down at Alexander, then back at Nathan. "I'll think about it." 2 days later, Dr. Porter delivered the news they'd been waiting for. Alexander was strong enough to go home. As Emily packed the few baby items they'd accumulated in the hospital room, Nathan completed the discharge paperwork, his signature flowing across the bottom of form after form. "There's just one problem," Emily said, as they prepared to leave. "I don't have anywhere for us to go. My apartment is being renovated. I was planning to be in Boston by now." Nathan hesitated only briefly. "Come to the penthouse. There's plenty of space, and I've had a nursery set up in the guest suite." Emily's eyes widened. "You've been planning this?" "Hoping," Nathan corrected. "No pressure. It's temporary until you find a place that works for both of you. For all of us," he amended. After a moment's consideration, Emily nodded. "Temporary," she agreed. That evening, as the city lights began to twinkle outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Nathan's penthouse, they settled Alexander into his new crib. The nursery had been hastily but expertly assembled by an interior designer Nathan had called the week before, painted in soft greys and blues with a celestial theme that reminded Emily of her favorite gallery exhibit. "It's perfect," she said, genuinely impressed. "I didn't know you had such good taste in baby decor." "I don't," Nathan admitted. "I showed the designer your gallery website. She said this matched your aesthetic." The thoughtfulness of the gesture caught Emily off guard. This was a different Nathan from the man she'd divorced, still commanding and confident, but with a new awareness, a consideration she hadn't seen before. They settled into a tentative coexistence over the next few weeks. Nathan converted one of his home office spaces into a workspace for Emily, where she could research artists and plan for the foundation role she had cautiously accepted. Alexander thrived in the peaceful environment, gaining weight and strength daily. One evening, as they sat on the terrace watching the sunset after putting Alexander down for the night, Emily voiced what had been on her mind. "This is strange, isn't it? Living together again after everything?" Nathan sipped his wine. "Good strange or bad strange? I'm not sure yet." Emily tucked her feet beneath her on the outdoor sofa. "But different. You're different. Having your life completely upended tends to change your perspective," Nathan said wryly. "It's more than that." Emily studied him. "You listen now, you're present." The old Nathan would have been on his phone through dinner, mentally calculating profit margins. The old Nathan didn't know what he was missing, he admitted quietly. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Emily spoke again. "I've been meaning to ask you something. That night, the Thompson celebration in December, why did you invite me? We were practically separated by then." Nathan considered the question. "I think I wanted to remember what we had been before things went wrong, and maybe," he hesitated, "maybe I wanted to see if there was anything left to save." "And was there?" Emily asked, her voice barely audible above the distant city sounds. "I thought there wasn't," Nathan said honestly, "but now I'm not so sure." Emily met his gaze, her expression vulnerable in a way he hadn't seen since their early days together. "I'm scared, Nathan. Not just of getting hurt again, but of hurting you, of falling back into the same patterns." "I'm scared too," he confessed, "but I'm more afraid of not trying, of Alexander growing up with parents who live separate lives because they were too stubborn or too prideful to work through their issues." "We had real problems," Emily reminded him. "They didn't just disappear because we had a baby." "No," Nathan agreed, "but maybe we have better reasons now to address them, to find solutions instead of escape routes." Emily was quiet for a long moment. "I don't want to rush into anything." "Neither do I," Nathan said. "We've both changed. We need to get to know each other again. Figure out who we are as Alexander's parents before we decide what else we might be to each other." Emily nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "That sounds reasonable. Very un-Nathan-like." "I'm learning," he said with an answering smile. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Nathan stood in his office at Reed Tower, gazing out at the cityscape. On his desk sat a framed photo of Alexander, now a robust, smiling 8-month-old with Emily's dark hair and, everyone agreed, Nathan's determined chin. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Reed, your 1 o'clock is here." "Send her in," Nathan replied, straightening his tie. Emily entered, dressed in a stylish blazer and carrying a portfolio. The Reed Foundation Arts Initiative was launching next month, and as its director, Emily had been working tirelessly to curate the inaugural exhibition. "Ready for lunch?" she asked. "I brought the final artist selections for you to review." "Actually," Nathan said, picking up his coat, "I thought we might make a slight detour first." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Where to?" "It's a surprise." 20 minutes later, their car pulled up outside a brownstone in Greenwich Village. Emily looked at Nathan questioningly as he helped her out of the vehicle. "What are we doing here?" "Looking at real estate," Nathan replied, guiding her up the steps where a realtor waited. The brownstone was magnificent. 4 stories of classic architecture with modern updates, a private garden in the back, and a rooftop terrace with views of the city. "It's beautiful," Emily said as they completed the tour. "Are you thinking of buying it for the foundation?" Nathan shook his head. "I'm thinking of buying it for us. All 3 of us." Emily stared at him. What? The penthouse was always more my style than yours, Nathan explained. You loved our first apartment, the one in the village with the brick walls and the skylight. You said it had character. You remembered that? Emily said, surprised. I remember more than you think, Nathan replied. This place has character too, and space for Alexander to grow up, a yard for him to play in. Emily walked slowly around the master bedroom, running her hands over the original moldings. It's perfect, but Nathan, buying a house together is a big step. I know. Nathan took her hands in his. The past 6 months, watching you with Alexander, working with you on the foundation, getting to know you again, it's been the happiest time of my life. Emily's eyes glistened. Mine too. We're not the same people who got married 5 years ago, Nathan continued. And we're not the same people who got divorced a year ago. I think we're better, separately and together. Are you proposing? Emily asked, a hint of her old directness returning. Not yet, Nathan said with a smile, but I am suggesting we take another step forward, live together, not because of circumstances, but because we choose to, build a home for our son and for ourselves. Emily looked around the beautiful room, then back at Nathan. You're not buying it without my approval, are you? The old Nathan would have. The new Nathan knows better than to make unilateral decisions about our family, he replied. It's just an option. We can look at others. Our family, Emily repeated softly. I like the sound of that. 6 months after his divorce, Nathan Reed had received a call that changed his life. 1 year after that call, as autumn leaves swirled around the steps of their new brownstone, Nathan watched Emily push Alexander's stroller through the front door of their home. The baby babbled excitedly, reaching for his father as Nathan approached. Welcome home, Nathan said, lifting his son into his arms. With his free hand, he pulled Emily close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Home, she agreed, her eyes meeting his with a warmth that had once been lost but now, like so much else in their lives, had been found again. As they crossed the threshold together, Nathan reflected that some ends were really beginnings in disguise, and sometimes second chances came in the most unexpected packages.
The twin miracle. The price of cowardice. He left her because doctors told him she was infertile. 2 years later, he saw her with twins, and his world shattered. Do you believe in miracles born from pain? Smash the like button now. If you think life always finds a way, and comment what you would have done in Izzy's place. Chapter 1. The Chill of a Diagnosis, Isabel. Izzy Hayes sat silently in the cold London medical office, her hands tightly clenched in her lap. Her knuckles were white, and the fluorescent ceiling light hummed softly. The air smelled of antiseptic and paper, and time stretched endlessly between the moment the doctor walked in and the moment she finally spoke. Her voice was clinical, calm, using words like insufficient function, low probability, and then the word that hit Izzy like a punch to the chest, infertile. She didn't cry. Not immediately. She just sat there, mechanically, her face pale as her heartbeat echoed in her ears. When she walked out into the gray afternoon light, everything around her felt unreal. Cars passed, people talked on phones, children laughed in the distance. The world kept spinning while hers had just stopped. She had always dreamed of being a mother. That dream now felt like a cruel joke. Chapter 2. The Cruelty of a Goodbye. When she finally reached her flat in Notting Hill, Ethan Sterling, her boyfriend of 2 years, was home early. Dressed in an impeccable white shirt, he stood by the kitchen island with a glass of whiskey in one hand and his phone in the other. The golden evening light made his blue eyes look colder than usual. "You're home early," he said, without much on. Izzy didn't answer right away. She slowly took off her coat, folded it with shaking hands, and placed it on the back of a chair. Then she spoke, her voice calm and firm, yet fragile. "I went to the doctor today." Ethan looked up. "How curious, man." She took a deep, steadying breath. "They told me I'm infertile. I can't have children." There was a long pause. Ethan stared at her, his face unreadable. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't move closer. He simply processed the words as if they were bad business news. distant, unemotional, cold. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he put down his glass with a soft clink, picked up his jacket, and walked toward the door. "That changes things," he said bluntly. "I'm sorry." And with that, he left. The door closed behind him with a silent finality that resonated louder than any argument. Izzy remained frozen, staring at the closed door. When she finally collapsed to the floor, tears fell in heavy, uncontrollable waves. Not just for the man who walked out, but for the future she believed had just been stolen from her. Chapter 3. The Canvas of Pain. The following days faded into a silent, painful fog. Izzy stayed inside, barely speaking, barely moving, wrapped in a blanket that did nothing to warm her. Ethan never called, never texted. It was as if she had been erased from his life as easily as he had walked out the door. She returned to her sketchbook, not to work, but to survive. Slowly, her drawings changed. Abstract expressions of pain evolved into softer, more hopeful representations of motherhood and transformation. Her art became the only language she had the strength to speak aloud. Chapter 4. The Unthinkable Suspicion. A week later, she forced herself out. She sat in a corner cafe, watching the world continue without her. That realization hurt, but it also helped. Maybe the world wouldn't stop for her pain. But maybe, finally, she wouldn't stop for it either. That night, something strange happened. As she brushed her teeth, her stomach lurched, and a wave of nausea hit her hard. It must be stress. But a flicker of doubt crept in, uninvited. Over the next few days, the nausea didn't disappear. Her breasts were tender. She was exhausted, even after hours of sleep. She told herself it was depression. Finally, her best friend, Chloe, burst into the flat, armed with groceries and sheer determination. Izzy finally broke down in Chloe's arms. Chloe made soup, cleaned the kitchen, and anchored Izzy with her presence. That night, after yet another wave of nausea, Chloe leaned in and asked softly, "Izzy, is there any chance you could be pregnant?" Izzy laughed bitterly. "I'm infertile, remember?" But Chloe didn't laugh. "Are you sure?" It was the first time Izzy realized she wasn't. Not really. Just one diagnosis delivered in one sterile office by one doctor who barely looked at her. If you identify with the feeling of having to start over, comment "rebirth" and don't forget to subscribe. Chapter 5. 2 lines, 1 destiny. The next morning, Izzy stood barefoot in her bathroom, staring at the pregnancy test monitor. Her fingers trembled. She told herself it was just to rule it out. She opened the box with rigid hands. Finally, holding her breath, she took the test. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, waiting for the longest minutes of her life. When the timer softly beeped, she didn't move. Then, she walked to the sink, her eyes fixed on the test. 2 lines. Her heart stopped. She blinked, thinking her eyes were playing tricks. But the lines remained clear, impossible to deny. She was pregnant. Tears streamed down her face. These were not the messy tears of grief, but something different. Soft, overwhelming, miraculous. She was stunned by the silent wonder that had taken root inside her. Chapter 6. The Double Miracle. That same day, she booked an appointment at a different clinic. She needed certainty. When the new doctor moved the wand over her abdomen, searching the screen for answers, seconds passed. Then, the faint, unmistakable sound of one heartbeat filled the room, and then another. Izzy's eyes flew open. "There are 2, the doctor said, smiling. "Were you expecting twins?" Izzy covered her mouth again. 2 heartbeats, 2 lives, inside her. It was more than a miracle. It was everything she thought she had lost forever. When she left the clinic, she clutched the ultrasound image like the most precious thing she had ever owned. She didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. Chapter 7. The Art of Motherhood. The following months were a quiet awakening. Izzy's art shifted from abstract expressions of pain to softer, more hopeful representations of motherhood and transformation. Her work matured, and she shared some of it online. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from women who felt understood. Chloe became her rock, helping her set up the nursery, soft sage green walls, and 2 side-by-side cribs. In her 7th month, Izzy received an unexpected email from a small gallery in central London. A curator had seen her work and wanted to include several pieces in a local exhibition focused on motherhood and identity. Izzy agreed. On the opening night, Izzy wore a flowing cream dress that gently embraced her rounded belly. She watched quietly as people stopped before her work. It wasn't fame or money she felt. It was something deeper, connection. Chapter 8. The Return of the Shadow. Less than 2 weeks from her due date, Izzy walked slowly through Regent's Park. She sat on a bench near the fountain. It was then that her eyes landed on a tall figure across the path. Dressed in a tailored coat, Ethan Sterling was standing by the edge, talking on his phone. Her body froze. The world narrowed into a tunnel of sound and memory. He looked up. Their eyes met. He froze. The call ended. Ethan began walking toward her, slowly at first, then faster as he recognized her face. He stopped a few feet away, unsure how close he was allowed to get. "Izzy," he said, almost disbelieving. "You're pregnant!" She didn't respond. She looked at him with an expression that held no anger, but no welcome. "Is it mine?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly on the last word. "They are," she answered calmly, a hand resting protectively on her belly. "Twins. They'll be here soon." He sat beside her, staring blankly at the fountain. "I didn't know," he said. After a moment, "No one told me." "No, you didn't ask," she replied, not with bitterness, but with the simple truth. "You left, and I didn't chase you. You thought I couldn't. I was scared. I handled it badly." "Yes, you did," she said quietly. "But I'm not here for apologies. I made peace with your absence. They are my daughters, Ethan. I carried them alone, and we will raise them if necessary. But now you have a choice. Not for me, for them." He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something shatter behind his blue eyes. She carefully stood up. He instinctively reached to help her, and she allowed it, just for balance. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. "But if you truly want to be part of this, you must show up, not with words, but with presence." Then she walked away, leaving him standing beneath the amber light of the trees. With only the weight of the future, he still might have a chance to fight for. Have you ever wondered if people can truly change? Comment your opinion, and whether you think Ethan deserves a second chance, and don't forget to like. Chapter 9. The Rebirth in the Hospital. At dawn, the first contraction hit. Izzy called Chloe, then the hospital. The hours passed in a blur of pressure, effort, and sweat. When the first cry filled the room, followed by the second shortly after, Izzy felt her soul exhale for the first time in years. The nurses placed both babies on her chest, 2 perfect little girls, Olivia and Maya. Izzy sobbed, overwhelmed. She had done it, alone. She had grown 2 human beings from a place that once felt empty. A nurse knocked gently before entering. "You have a visitor?" she said softly. "A man. He says his name is Ethan Sterling." Izzy froze. Finally, she said, "Let him in." Ethan entered the room. He was nothing like the man who had abandoned her in silence. He looked vulnerable. His eyes nervously searched until they landed on her. Then, slowly, they dropped to the 2 bassinets. He approached cautiously. "They're beautiful," he said, his voice cracking. She watched him. He leaned closer to the bassinets, gently studying the girls as if they were rare, delicate artifacts. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. I've been thinking about what I would say if this moment came, and now I'm here, and nothing feels sufficient. They don't need your words, she said softly. They need consistency, presence, patience. He sighed slowly. I know. I can't ask for anything. I just want to try. Even if you don't forgive me. I want to earn a place in their lives. She gestured toward a chair. Sit! But don't make promises you're not ready to keep. He sat in silence. And for a long time, they said nothing at all. Chapter 10. The Honest Commitment. The following months were a whirlwind of night feeds, diapers, and stolen naps. Izzy adapted to motherhood instinctively. Ethan kept coming. Every day. He didn't bring flowers or grand gifts. Instead, he brought questions. He wanted to learn how to hold them, feed them, and recognize the different types of cries. He didn't try to impress or take control. He simply asked to be useful. Izzy permitted it, cautiously. She watched him, looking for signs of inconsistency, waiting for the moment he would walk out again. But he didn't. He took the night shifts, learned to deal with colic, and cleaned spit up from his expensive shirts without complaint. Day after day, he showed up. 3 months later, Izzy found herself in the kitchen at sunset. Ethan was quietly assembling a new baby bouncer in the living room. She heard him humming again, a tuneless melody, and a strange warmth bloomed in her chest. That evening, they sat on the sofa. She offered him a glass of wine. You're different, she said. Not just how you act, but who you are. I feel different, Ethan said. Being with them, with you, has changed everything. Why didn't you come back sooner? She asked, the question she had carried like a stone in her chest. He looked down at his hands. Because I was ashamed. I thought I didn't deserve to reappear, and I feared that if I did, you wouldn't even open the door. I didn't expect you to come back, she said. And I didn't plan for you to stay, but you did. Ethan put down his glass and moved closer to her. I don't expect a second chance, Izzy, but I would give anything to build something better than the first. She wasn't ready to erase the past, but she was ready for something more. Then stay, she said softly. Not just for them. For real. A few weeks later, on the girl's 4-month birthday, Izzy hosted a small gathering in the park. Olivia and Maya slept soundly beside them. Ethan pulled something from his pocket. A small velvet box. I know this isn't a traditional moment, he said, and I know I have so much more to prove. But I also know this is the clearest I've ever felt in my life. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my days making up for the ones I lost. He opened the box. A simple, honest ring. I'm not asking for a perfect future, just the opportunity to build a real one. With you. Izzy looked at the ring, then at the man beside her, and finally at her daughters, sleeping with their fists clenched. For the first time, she didn't feel like she had to protect herself from what she wanted. She took the box and whispered, "Then let's start over." And in the soft glow of that golden afternoon, with the scent of wildflowers in the air and the sound of tiny breaths beside them, they did. Reflection and final call to action. The story of Isabel Hayes and Ethan Sterling is proof that love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone who is willing to be real. Izzy didn't wait to be saved. She rebuilt herself from scratch, transforming heartbreak into strength and silence into purpose. Ethan returned, humbled and ready to prove his worth, not with grand gestures, but with presence and patience. Their reunion isn't based on forgetting the pain, but on overcoming it together. The twins, Olivia and Maya, born of a miracle Izzy was told she'd never have, are the living symbol that life can bloom in the spaces where everything once felt lost. This ending doesn't promise a flawless future, but something more important. A future built on truth, forgiveness, and the kind of love that chooses to stay. Thank you for following this incredible story. If it moved you, subscribe and share this video to honor the power of second chances. Chapter 11. The Daily Test of Trust. Thu Thuk Long Tin Hang Ngay. The engagement didn't erase the 4 months of silent abandonment. Their life together became an intensive study in rebuilding trust, and Izzy was the meticulous professor. They moved into a beautiful, spacious house in Richmond, close to a large park. But the luxury of the house was secondary to the daily accountability. Ethan didn't wear the engagement ring. He wore a new watch, a constant reminder of the time he had to earn back. Izzy's scrutiny was intense, particularly when Ethan returned to his investment firm. "I need to know your schedule, not for control, but for transparency," Izzy told him firmly. "If you are late, you call. If you have a crisis, you communicate. The old life of self-containment is over." Ethan accepted the terms without protest. He understood that every canceled meeting, every early departure from the office to take a crying baby, was a brick laid in the foundation of trust. He learned to delegate, to prioritize the urgent cries of his daughters over the urgent demands of the market. One evening, a major financial crisis erupted. Ethan had a crucial, unscheduled late-night call with clients in Hong Kong. Izzy, overwhelmed by colic and sleep deprivation, watched him take the call from the spare room. Later, she found him in the nursery, holding a wailing Olivia. "It was a disaster," Ethan admitted, exhausted. "I lost millions in the last hour, Izzy." "Did you hide it?" she asked softly, watching him rock their daughter. "No, I lost the money, but I told my partners the truth. My priority is here tonight. I rescheduled the follow-up for the morning." Izzy walked over and gently touched his shoulder. "The money can be earned back, Ethan. The trust cannot." Do you think Izzy's firm conditions and Ethan's commitment to presence are a realistic model for healing after betrayal? Comment your opinion. Chapter 12. The Lie Exposed. As the twins approached their first birthday, Izzy insisted on seeing a specialist for a definitive, second opinion on her infertility diagnosis. It was a final step she needed for her own peace of mind. Ethan, though worried, fully supported her. The appointment was clinical and thorough. After reviewing the initial reports and conducting new scans, the specialist, Dr. Anya Sharma, walked into the room with a puzzled expression. "Mrs. Hayes," Dr. Sharma began, "your initial diagnosis was incorrect. Based on these advanced scans and blood work, there is absolutely no anatomical or hormonal reason for infertility. In fact, your ovarian function is robust." Izzy and Ethan stared at the doctor in stunned silence. "I believe," Dr. Sharma continued, examining the old report, "that the previous doctor misread the initial hormone panel, possibly confusing the temporary stress markers with a permanent condition. You were never infertile." The relief was physical, but the revelation was a shock. Izzy looked at Ethan. He had left her not because he was scared of a pregnancy, but because he was scared of a life without one, based on a lie. That night, alone in their living room, Izzy confronted him, holding the original report. "You left me based on a mistake," she whispered, her voice tight with residual pain. "You let me grieve the loss of a future that was always possible." "I know," Ethan admitted, tears in his eyes. "But Izzy, the lie was about me, not you. I left because I was obsessed with the perfect life. I wanted the perfect career, the perfect wife, and the perfect 2 children, neatly planned. When the doctor told me the future was imperfect, I ran from the commitment required for the imperfect reality." He knelt before her. "The miracle wasn't that you got pregnant, Izzy. The miracle was that you re-entered my life and forced me to confront the flaw in my own character. That diagnosis exposed my cowardice. I don't love you because you gave me daughters. I love you because you allowed me to heal the part of myself that was incapable of loving anything that wasn't perfect." Izzy looked at her husband, seeing the raw truth. The lie had hurt, but it ultimately revealed the depths of his change. She reached out and pulled him into a fierce, healing embrace. The pain of the past was real, but the future they were building was more so. Final call to action. A future built on truth. This chapter reveals that the greatest obstacle wasn't the diagnosis, but the fear of imperfection. If you believe Ethan's honesty and vulnerability truly earn him forgiveness, share this video now. Comment below. Now that the diagnosis is proven false, should Izzy and Ethan try for a third child, or focus solely on Olivia and Maya? Your support helps us tell stories of transformation. Thu Yet Voi, tôi rất vui vì bạn vẫn muốn tiếp tục khám phá những chi tiết sâu sắc hơn trong câu chuyện này, đặc biệt sau tiết lộ lớn đó. Để tiếp nối một cách ý nghĩa, tôi sẽ tập trung vào việc củng cố lại lời hứa của họ dựa trên sự thật và thử thách gia đình đầu tiên của họ. Tôi sẽ tiếp tục với phong cách tiếng Anh lôi cuốn, tuân thủ các quy tắc bạn đã đặt ra. The Twin Miracle, The Vow of the Imperfect Future. Chapter 13. The Vow of the Imperfect. The revelation that Izzy had never been infertile was a shock, but ironically, it cemented their foundation in a way nothing else could have. The false diagnosis had forced Ethan to face his deepest flaw, his fear of imperfection, and he had passed the test. 2 months later, they stood before a judge in a simple, elegant civil ceremony. This wedding was not about proving love. It was about affirming their choice based on the absolute truth. During the vows, Ethan spoke from the heart, discarding the prepared script. "Izzy," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I am not promising you a perfect life. I am not promising you a life without problems, because I now know that would be a lie. I promise you one thing: transparency. I promise to communicate my fears, to confront my flaws, and to never again run from the beautiful, messy, anti-imperfect reality we have built." Izzy, looking radiant in her simple white gown, slipped the honest ring onto his finger. "I promise you my honesty, Ethan. I promise to challenge you, to hold you accountable, and to always remind you that our greatest strength is the courage we found in our weakest moments." Their wedding photos were filled with authentic, unguarded joy. Olivia giggling while grabbing Ethan's tie, Maya sleeping soundly in Chloe's arms, and Izzy and Ethan looking at each other, fully seen and fully accepted. Chapter 14. The Crisis of the Unplanned. Their happiness was tested 6 months later when an uninvited complication from the past resurfaced: Ethan's family. Ethan had always kept his distance from his parents, who embodied the same rigid standards of success and perfection he had struggled to escape. They had been absent during the girl's birth and the wedding, viewing Izzy and the unplanned family as a distraction from Ethan's career track. Now, Ethan's father, Mr. Sterling Sr., called an emergency family dinner. "Ethan," his father began, reviewing his son's recent performance, "your investment returns are down 15% this quarter. Your focus is compromised. You need to get your priorities straight. This domestic situation," he gestured dismissively toward Izzy, "is impacting the legacy." Izzy stood up calmly, facing the patriarch who once terrified her. "Mr. Sterling, the only thing impacting Ethan's legacy is the outdated belief that success is measured solely by profit. He has built a life of integrity, something money can't buy." Mr. Sterling ignored her, focusing his cold gaze on his son. "You need to put your life back on track. We suggest you send the twins to an au pair school in Switzerland and return to your 16-hour workdays." Ethan, however, was no longer the frightened man who had run from a diagnosis. He stood beside his wife, his spine straight. "Father," Ethan said, his voice firm and unwavering, "my priority is no longer the market. It is my family. My daughters are not a distraction. They are my center. And my wife is my partner, not a commodity you can dismiss." He delivered the final defining blow. "I've tendered my resignation from the firm. I'm starting my own fund. One based on ethical, sustainable investments. I will never sacrifice my life for a spreadsheet again. And if that means forfeiting the family name and inheritance, then I accept that price. Izzy watched her husband, her heart swelling with an immense pride that dwarfed any emotion she had ever felt. He had chosen her truth over his legacy. Final call to action. The price of true success. Ethan's ultimate choice, walking away from the inheritance he once craved, proves his total transformation. If you believe he made the right decision, leave a comment with the word integrity to celebrate his choice. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Chapter 15. The New Empire. Ethan's resignation sent shockwaves through the financial world. But his new venture, Ethel Partners, named after an old English word for noble or principle, became an immediate success. He focused on sustainable, socially responsible investments, a clear moral contrast to his family's ruthless, profit-driven legacy. The irony was not lost on the business community. Ethan, freed from the chains of his family's expectations, was more focused and successful than ever before. His clients were drawn not just to his talent, but to his story of redemption and integrity. Lila, Izzy, was his silent, powerful partner. She continued her art, now creating pieces that celebrated the balance of life and work. She used the success of her art to establish a women's resilience fund, investing in business startups run by single mothers, a direct tribute to her own struggle. Their life became a beautifully orchestrated dance of purpose and parenting. Ethan worked flexible hours from their home office, always available for school runs or a quick twin crisis. Lila thrived, managing her art commissions and the fund with the same clarity she used to demand from Ethan's schedule. Olivia and Maya, now vibrant toddlers, were the central focus. They were raised in an environment where true success was measured in laughter, presence, and kindness, not in market share. Do you think the freedom from his family's financial control was the true catalyst for Ethan's massive success? Share your insights in the comments. Chapter 16. The Unexpected Letter. 5 years into their marriage, Ethan received a peculiar package delivered to the old family firm, which was then forwarded to his new office. It was a thick, legal envelope bearing the address of the clinic where Izzy had received her original, false infertility diagnosis. Inside was a letter from the head of the clinic, along with a certified copy of Izzy's initial medical file. The letter explained that the original doctor had recently passed away, and during the audit of his private files, the clinic discovered a note regarding Izzy's case. To whom it may concern, the initial infertility diagnosis for Ms. Hayes, Izzy, was incorrect. She was perfectly fertile. I regret that I rushed the preliminary reading due to personal stresses at the time. I never had the courage to correct this massive, life-altering mistake. Ethan read the note, his hands trembling. It was the confirmation of the lie they already knew, but seeing it in ink gave it finality. He looked up at Izzy, who walked in with a cup of tea. "It's about the diagnosis," he said, handing her the letter. Izzy read it, her face calm. She looked at the paper, the source of all her initial pain, the catalyst for Ethan's flight, and the accidental trigger for their real love story. She smiled, a peaceful, accepting smile. "He never had the courage to correct it," Izzy murmured, referring to the deceased doctor. "But his mistake led to our greatest truth." She took the letter and gently put it through the paper shredder in their office. "The lie is now completely gone, Ethan," she said, taking his hand. "And all that is left is the life we chose to build on the truth." Their love story wasn't just about a second chance. It was a testament to the powerful, beautiful reality that sometimes the most devastating mistakes in life are the ones that force us onto the path of our greatest, most authentic blessings. Final call to action. What an incredible ending. If this story inspires you to seek your own authentic truth, comment below with the word authentic to celebrate their journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe.